Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sujan Jez, and I'm the CEO of California Competes. And we're one of the co-leads of the California Alliance for Student Parent Success. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today in this webinar as we come together to explore some of the great work happening across California to support student parents. And those housekeeping items I mentioned, want to go through them quickly. So first, we have the chat open. So feel free to comment and share insights throughout today's discussion. And if you have any questions during the session, simply click on the Q&A icon located in the control panel and submit your questions through there. That way we can see them, because at the end of the webinar, we have some time to address some of the questions that come up. We will also send out a recording to all the folks who registered following the event, and we will also post it on the Alliance's newly launched website, which you can find at castudentparentalliance.org. We will also drop that in the chat. Okay. So let's see, next slide. I am thrilled to introduce Assemblymember Mark Berman to share some welcoming remarks with us. Assemblymember Berman represents the 23rd Assembly District in California, which includes Southern San Mateo County and Northern Santa Clara County. I've appreciated Assemblymember Berman's leadership and championship on our state's higher education system to really help ensure that it meets the needs of our state's current and future students. To this end, he chairs California Assembly's Select Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education. And as anyone that has been a student of higher ed in our state knows, we have this master plan that has been a leader across the country and a model for the other states, but it needs some revision. So in thinking about what is the new master plan for our state and what should higher ed look like. So thank you for your leadership in that. Also through prioritizing student parents' needs through legislation that expanded access to priority registration and basic needs supports, and is now the author of Assembly Bill 2458, which is the California Alliance for Student Parent Success's first sponsored bill. And we'll discuss that bill in more detail later in this webinar. I will turn it over, and please join me in welcoming Assemblymember Mark Berman.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sujan, for that introduction. And thank you to California Competes and EdTrust-West for teaming up to launch the California Alliance for Student Parent Success. I'm honored to join the webinar to introduce the Alliance and provide remarks on our efforts to make higher education attainable for student parents. Thank you all for attending and for your interest in being here today, which demonstrates your commitment to supporting student parents. I am grateful to the organizers and speakers for bringing us all together during this crucial opportunity to improve the lives of some of our most vulnerable and hardest working students. For me, authoring legislation to support student parents, to support student parents was a natural progression from my work to address students' basic needs insecurity. I've had the privilege of championing students' basic needs for the last 5 years in the California legislature, and I first learned about the scale of basic needs challenges by hearing directly from students who shared their very personal experiences with me and my colleagues. As Sujan mentioned, I chair the Select Committee on the Master Plan for Higher Education, and in that role, I held 5 hearings across California, and a constant theme during every hearing was students talking about their struggles to meet basic needs, including facing homelessness, food insecurity, and a lack of access to health and mental health services. But I also began to hear more about the student parents who are navigating college and the additional responsibilities that they bear. As we all know, the journey to and through college is challenging for many students, but it's even more difficult for student parents as they juggle academic demands while also raising children. The disruption of higher education learning due to the COVID-19 pandemic also brought urgent attention to the needs of student parents whose challenges were compounded as school and childcare interruptions placed significant new demands on their time and attention. California Competes, through their research, found that California is home to approximately 300,000 undergraduate student parents. 61% of these student parents are first-generation college students, and 72% are students of color. As a result, addressing the needs of student parents can also help reduce equity gaps. Student parents also face greater economic barriers than students without children. Over 2/3 of student parents live in or near poverty, and student parents have higher levels of unmet financial need and higher median student debt. After learning all of this, I felt that student parents deserve particular focus and our support, which is why I introduced AB 2881 in 2022, which granted priority registration to student parents and brought greater attention to their needs. I'm so proud that AB 2881 has served as a catalyst in a growing movement to both raise awareness and support for student parents. Student parents are getting the visibility and attention and appreciation that they deserve, which is why I'm so excited about the launch of the California Alliance for Student Parent Success. As the Alliance knows, there is always more we can do, which is why this year I introduced AB 2458, the Gains for Student Parents Act. I'm thrilled to work with the Alliance on their very first sponsored bill to ensure that student parents obtain the financial aid they are eligible to receive by taking into account their childcare expenses, as well as collecting and reporting student parent data to further advance student parent success. Identifying student parents and increasing their access to financial aid will allow them to better afford, enroll in, and successfully complete their higher education journey. I'm excited that you'll be able to hear more details about AB 2458 later in the webinar, including ways to support this important effort. And I am honored to be a part of introducing the Alliance to you all today and look forward to our work together to support the success of student parents and their families. And I apologize for all the pings in the background you might be hearing. Turning it back over to you, Susan. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Assemblymember Berman. Really appreciate your leadership. Let's see, back to the slides, and I will share our agenda for this webinar. So first, we're going to kick off about what is this alliance? We'll introduce the California Alliance for Student Parent Success, which you've heard me refer to as the Alliance, who we are, what we do, and provide some context setting into who are California's student parents. Then we'll go over the Alliance's policy agenda and discuss the progress we've made through the Gains for Student Parents Act, the Assembly bill we just discussed, and ways to continue to support it through the legislative cycle because we're just getting started. Finally, we'll leave some time for questions and answers. So next slide. What is this alliance I keep mentioning? The alliance is led by California Competes and EdTrust-West, with support from an advisory committee composed of student parents and other field experts. We're focused on supporting the post-secondary success and comprehensive well-being of California student parents and their families. California Competes and EdTrust-West joined forces to leverage our unique strengths in each organization to drive meaningful change. We're building this alliance with the goal of shifting policies, practices, resources, building relationships, identifying and making different decisions, and building beliefs to improve the life outcomes of student parents and their families in California. So, who are the people behind the alliance? So from California Competes, the leads that you will see or be talking to as you engage with the Alliance are myself, Anna Johnson, who goes also by AJ Johnson, our policy director, and Laura Szabo-Kubitz, our senior policy fellow. And now I'll turn it over to Maya to introduce the Alliance leads from EdTrust-West and share more details on the Alliance.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sujan. Hi, everyone, and thank you again for being here. I'm Maya. I use she, her pronouns, and I'll be introducing the EdTrust-West team. And so we have Chris, so we have our executive director, Dr. Chris Nellam. We have Denise Luna, who is the director of higher ed policy, and then myself, policy analyst, and alliance lead for on behalf of the org. Next slide. Thanks for putting that in the chat, Esme. So Sujan touched on a little bit about the alliance, but the alliance want to provide some more information. As Sujan shared, the alliance is really a collaboration between EdTrust-West and California Competes that seeks to bring together diverse stakeholders from research and advocacy to policy, business, and more really with the shared goal of championing the post-secondary success and well-being of more than 400,000 student parents in California. Not only do we champion the post-secondary success of currently enrolled student parents, but we also champion the success of the 3.9 parenting Californians without a college degree. Our mission and our vision. So the Alliance's mission aims to support the post-secondary success and, again, comprehensive well-being of California student parents and their families. And we also envision a brighter state, a brighter future, a brighter California for student parents and their families. One where higher ed systems equitably support and empower. And so really want to emphasize that empower piece. We really want systems to equitably support and empower students on their paths to earning meaningful degrees and credentials, as well as securing gainful employment. And so as part of our work, we commit to driving systems change and really advocate for a greater investment in resources and services that propel student parents and, again, their families forward. Thank you. Our advisory committee, so we did put a link in the chat to our advisory committee so you can learn more about those folks. But the Alliance has a very robust advisory committee that comprises student parents from across higher ed segments, as well as field experts. And so our committee provides guidance and expertise to help shape and refine our strategies. And so some of you may know that the folks on our advisory committee and or be familiar with some of the work that they've done, particularly as it relates to student parents. But we wanted to give a shout out to these folks. So Dr. Tina Chuk, Larry Gonzalez, who's a student father at Cal State Bakersfield, Lupe Larios, student parent at East Los Angeles College, Jessica Lee, Elizabeth Lopez, student parent at UC San Diego, Michaela Martin, and Allie Olson. And so as you can see, these advisors, very robust group, very diverse group, but they bring a set of experiences and backgrounds that inform our efforts. So what do we do? What does the Alliance do? The Alliance has 4 anchoring activities. And so these are essentially like our main buckets of work. And so we engage in policy advocacy, and our policy advocacy emerges from identified student parent needs. And so like our co-sponsored legislation, the Games for Student Parents Act, or AB 2458. We also do capacity building or technical assistance. And so we're actually going to be launching or releasing an RFA at the next month or so for community colleges in California. And so we'll begin to provide research and implementation guidance for community colleges that is student serving, removes barriers, and improves programmatic initiatives for parenting students and also single mother students. We do research and analysis, and our research and our analysis is really is interconnected with our policy advocacy. And so we conduct research to inform what policies and practices best support student parents. And we will be releasing a research agenda later this year. And then community engagement. We convene folks and we work to support and strengthen cross-sector efforts for systems change. But more importantly, I think through community engagement, we strive to empower student parents with the tools and the relationships that they need to ensure their experiences and perspectives shape state policy. So who are student parents in California? There are 300,000 undergrad student parents in California. There are 12% of the student population. And so 300,000 student parents enroll in college each year. However, we know their background, their family experiences, educational experiences are not well understood, particularly at the state level. And so the Alliance really sought to create a better understanding of who student parents are and what their needs are. And so the goal really is to create a foundation for informed decision-making that improves state system and campus policies and practices. And so I know we dropped a link in the chat to this infographic, the infographic on the slide, but this infographic is was pulled out from a larger report that we will be releasing on under California's undergraduate student parents. And so again, just kind of a teaser to that report. Student parents in California, 15% of female students have children. 8% of male students in California have children. Student parents in California are more likely to be students of color than white students. So we have 72% of student parents in California are Black, Latinx, Asian, Pacific Islander, or Native American. Student parents are more likely to be older. So the median age of a student parent in California is 34 versus the median age of a non-parenting student, which is 21. And student parents are more likely to live in rural and inland regions. And so as you can see on this heat map along the coast, so the lighter areas along the coast show, again, student parents less likely to live along those coastal areas, more likely to live inland. So Inland Empire, San Joaquin Valley, Central Sierra, excuse me. And there's quite some variation kind of between where student parents live. So we have 8% being the lowest, and that's like along the Central Coast. So 8% of student parents live along like the Central Coast, and again, the coastal areas, and then 20%, up to 20% in the more inland regions. Student parents are more likely to receive public benefits. And so we have student parents are 22% of student parents receive CalFresh versus 10% of non-parenting students. 33% of student parents receive Medi-Cal versus 24% of non-parenting students. And then 5% of student parents receive cash welfare benefits versus 1% of non-parenting students. And then across any of those benefits, student parents access or are more likely to access any of those benefits than their non-parenting peers. 61% of student parents are the first in their family to go to college, so more likely to be first-gen students, and 50% comparatively, or comparing to 50% of non-parenting students who are the first in their family to go to college. Student parents also are more likely to balance full-time work with school. So 47% of student parents work full-time versus 19% of non-parenting students. Student parents are more likely to borrow more money on average. And so we have about student parents, there's a median about $8,000 borrowed compared to $5,500 for non-parenting students. And student parents, so almost half of student parents, or almost a majority of student parents receive a Pell Grant, and versus or comparatively only 37% of non-parenting students receive a Pell Grant. And our policy agenda. So the Alliance's work is guided by a robust and comprehensive equity-centered policy agenda that shapes our efforts to elevate and address the barriers faced by student parents. And our agenda, which was placed in the chat, calls on state policymakers and higher ed leaders to champion core key strategies for a more inclusive and equitable California. And I'll pass it now over to Laura, who's going to dive more into our policy priorities.
Great, thank you so much, Maya. So as Maya mentioned, this past December, the Alliance published our policy agenda, which was informed by the critical work being done in the field to support student parents and their families, and includes feedback and recommendations from the Alliance's advisory committee. We have 5 core priorities, which are strengthening financial aid to cover student parents' true college costs, providing quality, affordable childcare options to address student parents' needs, meeting the housing needs of student parents and their families, advancing family-serving institutional policies and practices, and improving data collection and utilization on student parents' pathways to improve their well-being and success. So on the next few slides, I'll go into some of the details for each. Specifically, to strengthen financial aid to cover true college costs, we urge California policymakers and higher education leaders to strengthen transparency around student parents' true college costs and require financial aid offices ensure that cost of attendance budgets account for them. We encourage them to expand student parents' access to financial aid programs by removing eligibility barriers and increasing the amount available to cover non-tuition college costs, and maximizing student parents' receipt of all available financial aid. To expand quality, affordable childcare options, state leaders should increase the number of quality, affordable childcare providers both on and off campus to meet demand, and establish and expand childcare options, including after-school programs, and design them to align with student parents' schedules. Key ways to meet students' parents' housing needs are to increase the supply and expand access for affordable family-serving housing, both on and off campus. And it's critical to consult with student parents and incorporate their feedback into the design and the development of this housing. Along with these very critical state policies, institutions of higher education can take several steps to support student parents and their families. They can do this by implementing flexible pathways and teaching methods such as competency-based education and credit for prior learning to facilitate efficient progression towards college completion, enhancing course availability and accessibility, such as online and 8-week courses with increased on-ramp and enrollment opportunities. This also includes optimizing for scheduling, including evenings and weekends. Automating, streamlining, and maximizing student parents' receipt of public benefits and other community resources. And cultivating family-serving campus climates that build trust and a sense of belonging, such as by prohibiting discrimination, establishing peer networks, and creating institutional ally programs. And as Maya mentioned earlier, it's also very, very important to amplify student parent voices and hold family serving activities during campus events. Finally, improving data collection on student parents' pathways to better understand their experiences and the experiences of their families will help ensure that family serving policies and practices are designed to best support them. To do that, we ask that it be mandated that colleges collect, share among campus departments, and make publicly available comprehensive de-identified data on student parents. Require government agencies that administer programs used by student parents and their families to regularly analyze and publish data, and include data on student parents with linkages to their families in the California Cradle to Career data system. I believe it's already been included in the chat, but to learn more about our policy priorities, please check out our policy agenda. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, AJ Johnson, who will talk about AB 2458, authored by Assemblymember Berman, which directly addresses college affordability and data collection for student parents.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm thrilled to be with you talking about Assembly Bill 2458, and a huge thank you to Assemblymember Berman for championing that with us. AB 2458 would ensure student parents can access the financial aid that they're entitled to and improve data collection for student parents. So it covers two of those items you just heard Laura describe from our policy agenda. The bill is joined by a joint author, Assemblymember Berner, and co-authors Senator Limon and Assemblymember Dr. Arambula. So we have great leadership in the Assembly and Senate on the bill. It was introduced in February, and it made it with a unanimous supporting vote through the Assembly Higher Education Committee last week, and is now moving on to the Assembly Appropriations Committee. Letters of support for the bill are due on April 24th, and we'll let you know when the next hearing is set. So stay tuned for more on that. If you have any questions, you'll see on the screen here the co-sponsors of the bill. So feel free to reach out to any of us or myself with any questions. So I'll talk a little bit about the provisions within Assembly Bill 2458. So first, it will enhance financial aid access for student parents and require college campuses to collect and report information on their success. It's going to require automatic cost of attendance adjustments for student parents to better account for their expenses, including childcare, housing, which includes rooms for their children, food for their children that's not in a typical financial aid budget. So they do have greater expenses than their non-parenting peers. It will require institutions to collect student parent data and report that up to their system offices so that they can share them in the Cradle to Career longitudinal data system, which will tell us more about how we're doing as a state to serve student parents and let campuses know what they can do to make sure that student parents are receiving the support and kind of campus efforts to succeed. So these are the main 4 provisions of the bill. To dig a little bit deeper into what does it mean to enhance financial aid access. So first, we want to make sure that students receive full cost of attendance information, meaning the cost of childcare is included through the dependent care allowance. We also want students to know about federal and state tax credits that can help lift low-income Californian families out of kind of deep poverty. So these are thousands of dollars in tax credits that can help students pay for some of their college expenses, their dependent care costs, and others. There are also free tax filing services. I know the tax filing deadline is on April 15th. So if you haven't gotten your child tax credit or your child independent care credit, or if you have students who are parents, you want to help receive that thousands of dollars that are sitting that they qualify for. We also want students to know about contact information for who to get help from on campus, how to go through that cost of attendance adjustment process so the financial aid they're receiving is reflective of how much their housing and childcare costs really are, and to update their net price calculators so that those Californians Maya talked about who might not have a degree yet but want to come to college can look at their costs and budget for it appropriately. The justification for this bill comes from not just like our advisory committee, from testimonials from student parents in California, but from the Government Accountability Office report, which actually found a few things that on a national level, we're not maximizing federal financial aid for parenting students. Students were unaware of the complicated financial award processes and how to navigate it. Most people have never heard of something called the dependent care allowance, even though it's been on the books since 1965. They're not routinely notified about how to request an adjustment. So if you've never heard of this, if you're a first generation college student, how do you know to go to the financial aid office and tell them you have children and tell them that you have additional costs and then get more federal financial aid grants and loans and unlock scholarship money? Well, this is kind of the learning that each student has to do on their own without the bill. So that's why we're introducing the bill. We want to move away from that individual request process to something more streamlined where every student will know about this and create that standardization that the Government Accountability Office found was not happening. So there's plenty of evidence to show that if we leave the status quo as it is, student parents will continue to leave federal financial aid on the table. So how can this help student parents if we enact this bill? First, for example, folks aren't waiting until the bill is passed to try and help students gain the full access to financial aid. A student parent at LA Trade Tech College was helped by a CalWorks officer to raise their cost of attendance to reflect their true food, housing, and childcare costs for the year. Her cost was adjusted from $23,000 to $37,000. That's a $13,000 increase, and that unlocked additional financial aid for her to be able to attend and cover those additional expenses. This helped her gain that grant, scholarship, and loan aid, and she's now transferring to CSU Northridge and will have that cost of attendance reflected there. So $13,000 difference is a big difference when you're thinking about budgeting in California and the true cost of living here. So what would this look like more administratively? First, campuses are not currently systematically identifying student parents, and it's hard to provide that tailored support that they need to get everything and to go through that case-by-case basis process. Since Assembly Bill 2881 that Assemblymember Berman also championed, they're starting to offer student parents priority registration, which means when they go to enroll in their classes, they can sign up before other students and take the classes that best fit their schedule. This is a nice accommodation for student parents who have time constraints due to parenting. That data, though, from AB 2881 can be used, since we're already identifying student parents for priority registration. We can then use that same information to identify students who are eligible for a cost of attendance adjustment and note it in the campus data system. So we're leveraging this prior effort that has kind of set the ground for today's bill. In the bill, we also want to more comprehensively define student parents so that it's inclusive of everyone who has child rearing responsibilities, including biological parents, foster parents, adoptive parents, legal guardians, and those acting in place of a biological or adoptive parent. So that's the definition that we're currently using in the bill. And that would be what would be sent up to the California Cradle to Career Data System. So those are the details of the bill. And next, I would welcome your support and assistance in helping usher this through the policy cycle. So in the chat, you will see the one-stop shop for everything you need to support the bill. It has our bill language, the fact sheet, an FAQ if you want to know more about how all of this works or get into the weeds on cost of attendance adjustments. We have a support letter template and a social media toolkit. So if you could please take a moment to click on that link, download a support letter if you're able to sign on as an organization or as an individual who is a faculty member or student, parent who would like to support the bill. There's options for you on that website. You can also follow any of our co-sponsor organizations on social media to help boost and post using that social media toolkit. I'll just go back because I love this photo. This was from the last hearing on April 2nd. And so if you'd like to also join us at a future hearing, you can always let me know and join us and Assemblymember Berman to help support the bill in person at the next event. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you so much, AJ. I hope I see a lot of chatter in the chat, and it looks like folks are learning some new things about the bill, and there are some questions about how CSU folks in particular can submit support letters. So we're excited about that. I think I have just the next 3 slides. This first slide is just to remind folks that we have a hub, a home for our work on the web at studentparentalliance.org. There's information there about who we are. Again, under the drop down about what we do, you can see our intention to do technical assistance, which I'll talk a little bit more, or capacity building in a few minutes, our community engagement work, our policy work and research work. We will be updating it with events and resources as we add them, and also as partners share resources with us. And so on the next slide, I just want to give folks a little bit more detail about what's to come, and hopefully entice you to join potentially as members, or at least join our mailing list to stay in touch with us. I also realized I did not introduce myself. My name is Chris Nellam. I have the privilege of serving as the executive director at EdTrust-West, and we are co-leading the alliance with our friends at the California Competes. My colleagues, you've already heard from Maya, today, and then also Denise is heavily involved with this work at EdTrust. So what's next? We plan to release very soon a research agenda because evidence is important, in particular evidence from California, the California context. And so we have a number of questions that we think are important to be answered as we think about how to use evidence to drive our advocacy, how to use evidence to inform what practitioners and educators are doing. We also have some research reports that will be coming, chock full of data that folks can use to make the case about why student parents in our state deserve better support from our colleges and universities. We will be continuing, as AJ just mentioned, our advocacy in general, but also specifically about in support of AB 2458. We're also very actively welcoming and building membership for the Alliance. You can see more on our website about what membership entails. There's a very short form to fill out to give us some sense of what you hope to gain from being a member and what we can provide. For members and supporters, we'll be having quarterly Alliance meetings, and then our annual convening, which I saw Stephanie asked about in the chat. That will be in LA, in Los Angeles, in I believe in September. And then we are very soon launching a technical assistance pilot program where we'll be working with via a community of practice with a handful of community colleges in the state to work with them in a proactive way to think about how better to support student parents. So that, be on the lookout for that request for applications very soon. We'll be inviting teams from community colleges to join that community of practice. And if you do join, you get in-kind support for that technical assistance. And then finally, we are building a resource hub. And so we'll be doing data collection for that. And that will also be posted on our website very, very, very soon. And then finally, just to, on my last slide, just want to reiterate. So there are several ways, and we want, for us, when we came together with California Competes to launch the Alliance, this is about community. This is about collective action. So this is not, while we are shepherding and anchoring the Alliance, this is not, the EdTrust and California Competes show. We feel and believe very, very deeply that the more the merrier, and actually the more folks who are involved, the greater our impact can be. So again, we invite you to strongly consider joining as members. You can join as an individual, or you can join on behalf of an organization if you have the ability to do that. We, of course, welcome folks with resources to invest in the Alliance, to invest in our technical assistance and other work, particularly our friends from the philanthropic world. And then again, you can advocate with us. AJ just showed a fantastic picture from one of the most recent hearings in support of Assemblymember Berman's bill. And then finally, if you want a lower touch way to be engaged, just join our mailing list and stay in touch with us. So again, we welcome folks to join us. For us, this is really important work because student parents, I would argue, deserve more from higher education so that they can pursue their dreams with fewer barriers. So I think we are going to shift to Q&A now. I see some questions popping up. I think I'm going to hand this back to my friend Laura to facilitate us through the Q&A.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate it. So yeah, as Chris just mentioned, we'd now like to open up the conversation to all of you to ask any questions you may have. And of course, there's been many great questions that have already been entered into the chat feature and answered. So let's see. First, why don't I turn it over to AJ? And I know there was a question. Sorry, I'm just looking at the my Q&A in front of me, which is not intuitive. Okay, so there's a question about how are we defining affordable childcare? So I'll turn it over to AJ to answer that.
Yes, thank you for that question. The federal law actually defines what's called the dependent care allowance as the student's actual or expected childcare cost. So it's not about being affordable or not, it's what it actually does cost. So we know that childcare is often not affordable, and to better be able to afford it, what student parents have to do right now is go to the financial aid office, tell them what their childcare costs, uh, perhaps provide paperwork, perhaps provide forms, perhaps provide proof that this child is theirs, whatever each campus requires right now. But what this bill would do instead is say, instead of assuming zero childcare costs for student parents, that there's a baseline cost based on what childcare rates are for providers of childcare subsidized vouchers by each county. So we're getting into the weeds a little bit with that answer, but what we want to do instead of that is just make sure that financial aid is adjusted to account for that average local cost of childcare that we know parents would reasonably anticipate using that government provided number. And campuses with the segments would be able to implement that policy.
Great, thank you so much. Very helpful. One question which I can answer comes from Teresa Bill, which is, are housing costs limited by federal financial aid? So students' cost of attendance budgets, which includes housing, are set by individual colleges or in some cases systems, and they dictate how much total financial aid a student can receive. So a student can receive non-need-based aid up to their total cost of attendance. But once you hit that ceiling, so if it's determined your cost of attendance is $35,000, even if you were able to get more financial aid and your costs are actually more than that, you can't actually accept it beyond that cap. And then students can also receive need-based financial aid through programs like the federal Pell Grant up to their financial need, which is defined as their total cost of attendance minus their student aid index, which has previously been known as their expected family contribution. So, you know, cost of attendance doesn't always mirror the true costs of what students are paying, and the great work that AJ and colleagues are doing around AB 2458 is really to help ensure that we have childcare and other child costs included in students' cost of attendance budget so that they can actually apply the financial aid they receive to help cover that. Okay. Let's see here. It looks like Sujin is in the middle of answering a question about mention by Stephanie Baker. Mention was made earlier about automating student parent access to public benefits. Is there somewhere I can read more about what that would look like? Sujin, are you able to answer that live as well?
Of course. I was just going to answer to Stephanie that this is something that California Competes is working on. It's not streamlined yet. And I was going to put in a link to a tool we have that's sort of a step towards this, where we've done a scan of the over 100 programs and services that a student would be eligible for, a student parent would be eligible for. And we sort of took the highest benefit programs, I think 30 of them, and put them in a user-friendly tool so you could easily search based off of your parenting status, disability status, your income, and the type of aid you're looking for to see what's available, and then what the eligibility requirements are and what the benefits are. So I will put that in the response in a second.
Great, thank you very much. Another question that had come in, and Maya, if you're able, Maya or Chris, if you're able to answer this, is how does the Alliance collaborate with educational institutions to create a more supportive environment for student parents?
Sure. So this on our website, I believe under what we do, this is characterized as capacity building. And also during my slide, slides, I mentioned technical assistance. So our intention of, our intention, in addition to looking to pass statewide policy that will impact institutional practice, our intention is to work directly with colleges that invite us in to do that work. We're going to pilot a community of practice in the fall with very soon in the fall with a small subset of community colleges in California. Each college will send teams of about 6 to 8 folks from a variety of places on their campus. We'll walk them through a process that involves some introspection, some opportunities to look at their policies, their data, their practices, and then we'll walk them through the second part of what we call a blueprint planning process that will take all of that information and then support them to think about how to put some new practices in place, we'll put some potential new policies in place at their campuses. The goal is to learn from that community of practice and then roll it out to more colleges across the state. Our intention, the thinking there is that we can't just depend on policy, although policy is very important, statewide policy. We also have to work, hand in hand in a supportive way with colleges that really want to do better. And sometimes it's really just about capacity or time or energy to think differently about how we support folks on campuses. And so that will kick off in the fall. I believe Maya will know the exact date, but the request for applications for that community of practice will be released, I believe, in a couple weeks.
Lovely, thank you, Chris. And I think Maya actually just posted this live, but I was just about to ask it. There's a question that is, can a step parent get the same assistance? I am a stepfather to 2 girls, and I'm currently going to be attending CSFU and was wondering if this would help me. Maya, are you able to share what you just posted?
Yeah, and I interpreted, I think that Andy, you attend Fullerton, Cal State, or you're going to be attending Fullerton. And so I was thinking about just like priority registration. I know that campuses have like CSUs, from my understanding, have like flexibility in like how they are providing or to whom they're providing priority registration to, whether it's like parent, like step parent, caregiver, if it goes beyond that, like more traditional parent. So I would reach out to I put it in the chat, like the Transfer Adult Reentry Parenting and Pregnant Student Center, those folks, because they would have some more information. And so again, I put their information. I'll put their number in the chat, as well as their website.
Great, thank you so much, Maya. A question that came in from Dave Moniz is, as a scholarship provider and aggregator, I would like to make it easier for student parents to find scholarships, especially knowing California is providing an appropriate cost of attendance and banning scholarship displacement. Do you have any advice on tags, filters, keywords that could help student parents find scholarships earmarked for them, or a list of colleges with strong support? Googling student parent scholarships does not work particularly well. Is there anyone on our panel who would like to answer that question? I mean, I know that I can say certainly that I think this is really important, that the language that we use is accessible, that we're not using the jargon, the financial aid jargon that a lot of people may not be aware of. So, but is there anyone that wants to kind of speak to more detail to this question? I can also just add myself that, I think that any feedback that you and others in the field, and especially that student parents have themselves, is welcomed. Learning directly from students and student parents about what they enter, what they're looking for, I think could really help inform the best way to make sure that we get the information most accessibly to students. So we welcome that feedback as well. Okay. Another question that came up here is for AB 2881, CCC Apply appears to be collecting data on all ages of caregivers birth to elders. Is the Alliance looking at this CCC data or statewide data to consider the impact on student parents, caregivers of additional adult dependent and elder caregiving while in school or trying to return to school? So currently we are staying very focused on student parents. I do totally understand though that there are caregivers for many types of people. And so certainly we would, be interested in looking into this at some point and welcome any thoughts you may have. But right now we are staying very focused on student parents of children. Another question to maybe Sujin or Christopher or Chris is what motivated you to become a champion for student parents?
Sure. I think for me, two things. One, from our research, we've long sort of advocated for adult learners generally in our state for Californians with a high school diploma and no college degree. And from one of our previous reports, Untapped Opportunity, we saw that most Californians who have a high school diploma and no college degree have dependent children. And so thinking about how do we make a pathway to higher ed a reality for those Californians, we realized we need to really think about student parents or institutions as one. And the other is, personal to me. My parents tried to go to college after they had me and realized they needed more economic security and that higher ed was the path to that, and weren't able to. And so when I think about the sort of life that I would have had, a different life as a kid, had my parents been able to go to college, that I would love to have it so that, other Californian children and Californians have sort of an easier and better life.
Thank you, Sujin. I see that that Maya is answering this question live, so maybe Maya, I'll turn it over to you. An anonymous attendee wrote, "Thanks for sending the information to join the membership. Can you share how the membership benefits those who are not in the state of California?"
Yeah, such a good question. Currently, we have several folks that have applied for a membership that are not California based. And so they're in the East Coast or Midwest and doing great work. But as far as membership benefits, I think that the membership benefits essentially, like I envision it or I see it as like we can grow the Alliance. Obviously, we're still going to remain focused on California student parents, but we can if we can convene folks and strengthen supports within and beyond California, that would be great. So like if we can for like peer learning, we can learn about your best practices. So whatever state you're in, and learn from you and likewise. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity for learning, for growth, and then just continue to increase groundswell of support for student parents within and beyond our respective states.
Great, thank you so much, Maya. Okay, let's see here. I think we have answered most of the questions. We'll make sure that if we have inadvertently skipped over any of them, or if I have, that we'll make sure that we follow up and answer those questions for you. But we want to just thank all of you again so much for joining us this afternoon to learn about the great work that's happening across California to support student parents, and for sharing your very thoughtful questions, and of course for all of the tremendous work that you do to support students as well. We'd like to thank all of our panelists today, and especially Assemblymember Berman for all he continues to do to support California students and student parents in particular. We look forward to collaborating with all of you to ensure all student parents have the supports and the resources they need to afford and succeed in higher education. So thank you again, and please reach out with any questions. We hope that you will reach out to learn more and partner with us. And we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. Thank you.
We have a lot to talk about, and I don't want to lose another minute. And they will just miss some of the housekeeping.